All right, on to some fun stuff here. We're going to be working on directions number 2. The lots of squiggly lines and things, and it's kind of hard to see what's going on there, but it's actually very easy once you're familiar with how to read the directions. Got all of our pieces and parts out. We're using the fast eddy bearings on the unit here. Go ahead and get your drive shaft. Just beware that there are 2 different kinds here. This is actually an output shaft, or a CVD dog bone. Don't confuse it with this one here. This one here has an open ball on the end, and this one here does not. So we're using the one with the open ball. Let's see where we are going to start here. Okay, go ahead and get out the gear here, which is the 48 pitch 11 tooth gear, and it's got holes in it. It's very interesting. The pin will slide through one set of these holes from side to side. If in fact later on the pins start to wear on the holes here, you can always take it out and move it over to the next set of holes. It's very nice of them to put several sets in there, and it is a beefy gear. Alright, go ahead and grab the UV joint coupler, which is this unit here, and you'll see that there's a hole in here. We're going to slide that through the hole in here, and let's make sure that the hole in the coupler lines up, and you can see straight through it just like you see here when it's in there. That is important that you get the orientation on that right, so it is up and down as you're holding your shaft. Holding your shaft. We're going to slip the gear over, and we're going to line up one set of the holes with the hole that's in the coupler and in the CVD joint, and we're going to slide the pin through. Sometimes it can be a handful to get everything to line up, but it should line in, slide in there just like that, and there should be free play and movement. Now, as we're holding all of this together, there are 2 very small shims. Let's go ahead and slide those over and onto the gear. There's one. Guess we could have put these on before, but that's okay. And 2. Put those in position. Slide them as far forward as they will go. And don't let the pin slide out here. So these should be all the way up. I'm sorry about the camera there. These should be all the way up against the edge of the gear. Now, let's take a bearing, slide it over, go over the shaft and push it all the way forward. Again, don't let this pin slide out. Now we're going to take the plastic retainer or spacer and slide it over and push it against the bearing. And take one more bearing, slide it over, and that's going to capture the pin. This is what it should look like. So you have 2 shims, bearing, spacer, bearing. Now you're going to see that there's a groove right where my fingernail is here that goes all the way around, and we're going to take the C-clip here and we're going to slide it into that groove and clip it in. Boy, that's a stiff one. I'm not going to, let's see if we can just push it in by holding it down here. If not, we're going to have to get out a pair of pliers. There we go. The clip slid in. You got to make sure that it is properly seated into the groove. And that's going to hold everything together. This one does not look like it is all the way on. You can see a little gap here. See this gap in between the gear and the clip. So let's get one of our Allen wrenches here and push it the rest of the way on. There we go. Now you can see that it sits and firmly against the gear. That's how that works. That is all there is to step number 2. Step number 3. Let's go ahead and grab the front shock tower, and you'll see that it is part number AX31025-2. We'll show you here. Again, we're just reading the trees. Go ahead and break this tree portion off. You can use your clippers, your wire cutters if you want. And I always recommend that you shave off with a blade the little spars, we call them tree spars, so that you don't catch your finger on it at some point or another, or grab it and cut yourself. It always makes for a nice clean build to cut off all the little tabs that are left over from the tree. Okay, we neglected to do one little part in step number 2, which is alright. We're going to get this portion of the diff case, which is AX31052-1, and it is different than the backside. This one has a hole in it. Let's slide the shaft that we just built down inside, and the bearings are going to seat into the grooves that are in here. Go ahead and push it in, and it should seat firmly in there. Make sure it's fully seated in. Next thing that we're going to do is to grab the diff that we built, and we're going to take note of the orientation on this. We're going to put the ears up and the open portion down, and looking at the picture, we're going to drop the diff in this direction with the gears on this side of the case, as you can see in the photograph. Go ahead and put that in, push on it, get the bearings seated down inside. And before we do anything, we're going to just test this by spinning the shaft, make sure everything goes free. Now we're going to grab the second half of the diff case, and again with the open portion going down, we're just going to set that here and get the shock tower. If you notice, the shock tower is fairly flat on one side. There are some reliefs, but it's fairly flat, and we're looking at this area here where the shocks mount, and you'll see that it has nubs that stick out in this direction. That's how we're going to put it in, as you can see in the photograph. It's going to sit down right on top of the diff housing, and it should slide in there. And seat in. There we go. Come on. Take this diff out for a second. Okay. It's going to snap and slide right in. Let's put our diff back in, and again, let's make sure we put it back in the right direction. Snap it back in and follow up with the second half of the diff case with the open end going down. And that should sandwich the shock tower in there. Make sure it's all put together, and again, anytime we put two pieces together, let's check for movement and binding before we start putting screws in. If there's any problems, we can back up. This looks like it's all operating correctly. Now we have 6 screws that we're going to worry about. There's 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4 that hold the 2 pieces together. Then there's 2 additional that hold and support the shock tower to the back of the diff case. I'm going to go ahead and put those in off camera. There's, like I said, there are a total of 6. There's the 3 on this side. That one has to be screwed in, and then 3 on the other. We're going to do that off camera. So we'll be right back. Okay, we finished up with step number 3, putting everything together. I do want to caution you, don't over tighten the screws. They are plastic into, or metal into plastic. You just want to put them in until they touch, and then just a little bit more. You don't want to over tighten them because they will strip out. These two were a little bit tough to get in. For whatever reason, they didn't make the holes pass, what we call pass-through holes. So you did have to thread the entire way through, and it gets to your wrist. Again, now that we've got all the screws in, anytime that you mess around with moving parts, you want to double check. Make sure that nothing is binding up and everything rolls smoothly. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Let's double check any moving parts, because now is the time to get them taken care of if they're not proper, because they can cause additional wear if there's drag in there. Can also rob speed and power from your rig. So make sure nothing binds. Here we go. And we will get out our pieces and parts and move on to step number 4.